Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Season 14, Episode 9, and The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, the second part of the reunion. Beverly Hills this week wasn't super exciting, but we got some good insights, and I think we finally got the conclusion of the Dorit and Kyle texting scandal, at least for now. We're starting on Kyle. She's alone in that big house of hers, and she's just talking about how she's an empty nester now, and the house is just starting to feel so big and empty all of the time. Low key, I forgot that Kyle knows how to speak Spanish, and her Spanish is kind of good, to be honest. She can speak confidently. Her accent isn't terrible. She's like pretty fluent. She's talking on the phone with Portia, and Portia's telling her that her and the other sisters are gonna go have lunch, and Kyle's like, "Oh, when are you going?" And Portia's like, I don't know. I don't know where. And Kyle's like, "Well, where are you gonna go?" And Portia's like, I don't know, Mom. Like, we just made these plans. Like, I don't know. And Kyle's like, "Well, can you tell me when you find out in case I want to come?" And Portia clearly does not want Kyle to come. Honestly, Kyle seems like a cool mom. I would love to have her for a mom. I think she's such a girl mom in particular. I would love to have so many sisters like that. I'm an only child, so like this kind of life is very foreign to me. Like going out to meet your sisters for brunch and like maybe your mom wants to come. Like I do not have that. But like also the girls are like teens and in their early 20s, so it makes sense that like they don't want Kyle to come all of the time. And then Kyle goes in the confessional and she says that the girls have been being kind of not secretive, but they want to hang out by themselves a lot more, and she thinks it's because they want to talk about the separation. Then she FaceTimes Erica, and they're talking about the texts, and Kyle says that she is done talking about it, me too, and she just wants to move on and disengage from Dorit and just like let this whole thing go. Separately, Dorit meets up with Bose for drinks, and Dorit reveals to Bose that she had a conversation with Kyle a while ago, I think like maybe a year or two ago, where she just straight up told her that she was concerned that her and PK might not make it. And it was like a very heart-to-heart conversation, and Kyle was like, "Yeah, sometimes I feel that way about Mo."
My husband, the one that you depend on the most, was spending a lot of time in London. I started to feel like Pete and I weren't connected. For the first time ever, I thought, is it possible that like Pete and I would not make it?
I've had those thoughts. I think that's normal to have those thoughts.
So she was well aware.
Kyle continues to lie. She's lying about the depth of her relationship with PK and what she's saying about Dorit. She's clearly lying about the depth of her knowledge about what's going on in PK and Dorit's marriage. If Kyle is afraid of looking bad, she's looking worse now.
Honestly, I think the craziest revelation from her conversation with Bose is that PK's sponsor is the one who suggested that he and Dorit separated. And I think, honestly, I mean, I've always hated PK, but I think the fact that it was his sponsor who suggested that he and Dorit separate makes me respect the separation even more. Because at the end of the day, it's like good that he has a sponsor and he's going to AA and he's really working on his alcoholism. And if it's a third party, and not even like one of your friends, this is like an objective third party who's trying to help you become your best self and get over the like demons of addiction. If they're telling you like you need to get separated from your wife for a little bit, I do not think this is good for you right now. Yeah, it makes sense that this is the path that they would go down. It's probably best for everyone. Kyle invited Sutton, Garcelle, and Erica to have dinner, even though they all have plans to see each other the next day at Garcelle's beach house. And Sutton is done with Kyle. I think Sutton is over Kyle's whole queen bee act. She basically just goes in the confessional and she's like, Kyle is rallying her troops. Like, we three are the ones who she thinks are on her side, and she's trying to make sure that we're all in alignment going into this day at Garcelle's house. I'm just not sure if Kyle is being as malicious and like diabolical as Sutton thinks that she's being. I think Kyle is just tired. Sutton thinks that she's kind of trying to manipulate the group and trying to be the queen bee, and she wants everyone to be on her side, and she's so much better than everyone else and blah, blah, blah. And yes, I do think Kyle thinks that to a certain extent. Like, she's the only OG housewife left on the show. She made this show. She's been on the show for like 20 years. It makes sense that Kyle would think that she's a step above everybody else, whether or not people actually believe that she is. But at the end of the day, I just think she's tired, and I think she wants friends, and I think she's alone in that big house of hers. All of her daughters are practically adults, not quite Portia yet, but she's alone. And I feel like she just wants friends. And I feel like she's been through so much struggle and strife over the last couple of years. And I'm not saying that like that just excuses all of her behavior, like with the texts and with the blowing up at people and things like that. But I just think she's exhausted and she wants a sense of normalcy and peace. Like, I don't think that's a crime. Garcelle gets there first, and Kyle does a little venting about what happened at Bose's party. Then the other two come, Sutton and Erica, and she apologizes to them about how she acted. And then Sutton asks her, why do you feel like you need to apologize? And Kyle's like, well, because of the way I acted and talked to everyone. And Sutton wants her to apologize for holding herself to a higher standard than everybody else. That's what she says she wants Kyle to apologize for. Sutton, I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned this. I struggle with Sutton. I've always struggled with Sutton. I used to hate her. I would say maybe up until like this season, I absolutely despised her and her whole like quirky, like weird girl kind of act. I think she is a child in a grown woman's body. And at the end of the day, I'm sorry. I agree with Erica. It's like what I just said. Erica goes in the confessional and she says Kyle is in the worst period of her life. Cut her some slack. I agree. And one thing I love about Garcelle is she is always gonna have so much fun just watching everything crumble down around her. Kyle and Sutton are like going at it, and Garcelle is literally sitting there sipping her little drink, watching. She does not care. It is so funny. I honestly just feel like what I really need right now, something that would really just heal me, is going to brunch with Bose and Garcelle. I feel like I really need that right now. I think it would be a spiritual healing. I think I would laugh more than I have laughed in months. So the next day, they're all meeting up at Kyle's house so they can drive together to Garcelle's beach house in Oxnard. It's like probably from Beverly Hills to Oxnard. With traffic, it's probably like 2 hours. It's like really far. And Dorit gets to Kyle's house and she says that Jagger, her son, who I think is older than the daughter, Jagger asked her this morning if her and PK are divorced. I guess, I don't know how, he probably has a phone, but I guess he saw the separation announcement that Dorit posted on Instagram. And it's like what I think Garcelle was saying, or maybe Sutton was saying at the club, like, kids know. Kids are very smart. Kids are very intuitive. Like, if he has a phone, it's like, yeah, of course you think that he wouldn't have read that. And if he doesn't have a phone, he could probably just like tell that something was off even before he saw the separation announcement. I mean, I'm sure this whole thing is really hard for Dorit and PK. I'm not trying to like tell them how to parent their kids. I do just think it's a little interesting that Dorit posted the separation announcement without first like talking to her kids about it. Especially if Jagger has a phone. I think I'm just not sure what she was expecting. I'm not sure if she thought that he just like wouldn't see it, or maybe she just posted it without thinking about it. But that was really interesting to me because she seemed so surprised and saddened by the fact that that's how Jagger found out. But it's like, what did you think was gonna happen? Like, you posted it on Instagram. Who knows? Like, maybe somebody showed it to Jagger. Like, I don't know, but I think that was like really interesting that she announced it to the entire world before she told her children. So she's talking to the women and she's telling this like really like sweet, sad story about how Jagger asked if her and PK will at least always be friends. And it's like really, really sweet and heartfelt. And Sutton just completely interrupts her to say that they need to leave. Like, fully mid-sentence, Sutton cuts her off and goes, okay, like, we need to leave, you know, there's gonna be traffic, we should just go right now. And Dorit just like kind of tries to keep going, and Sutton interrupts again to be like, no, seriously guys, like, we really need to leave. And this is when I was reminded of why I hate Sutton. I really do not like that woman. God bless her spirit. God bless her spirit. I really do not like her. I think she is so immature and I think she is so annoying. I have very little patience for like a quirky housewife, like a weird housewife. That's not what entertains me. It's not like funny to me. I'm catching up on the Real Housewives of Orange County right now, and Peggy is kind of playing that role. If you remember her, she's like really quirky and like weird, and she says like weird things, and sometimes she like doesn't understand what people are talking about, and I think it's supposed to be like funny, and to me it's just not. To me it's so annoying. I don't get along with people like that in real life, and I definitely don't want to watch that on TV. It's so annoying. They get to Garcelle's beach house in Oxnard, and Jennifer Tilly gives her a Louis Vuitton toaster. I think she said it's a Louis Vuitton toaster. I don't remember the brand, but it's a designer toaster. It's beautiful, and it matches Garcelle's decor. It's a good gift. I just know Jennifer Tilly gives the best wedding gifts. You know what I mean? She's going on your website on The Knot, and she's sorting on your registry price high to low, and she's buying you like the top 3 most expensive items on there. She's probably not even getting you a gift from the registry. She's walking into Louis Vuitton, and she's going and she's buying you like that luggage set of LV luggage. She's spending like $5,000 on it, and that's what she's giving you for your wedding. So Garcelle's plan is she drives them to the beach in golf carts, and they show up to just like this public beach in Oxnard, and there's this full-on like fine dining setup with a bartender, table linens, fine china, the whole thing. This is something that the housewives do a lot. This happens I think they do this in Orange County quite a few times. They've done this on Beverly Hills before, and I think even Vanderpump Rules, they've done this before, and it always confuses me. I understand you're bougie, everything you do is bougie, I totally get it, but who wants to be sitting in full glam on the beach in the sand at a table with linens, and all of the linens are like blowing around in the wind, and sand is getting on the table because people are walking by you and like kicking the sand? I'm just imagining like a family next to them having a full-on like barbecue. They brought out the portable grill, they're grilling like hamburgers and hot dogs, and they've got like little kids running around in their bathing suits throwing like volleyballs and kicking soccer balls that are like flying past your head, and you're sitting there like trying to enjoy like your 5-course meal on the beach in the sand barefoot. Not for me. But anyway, this is where Kyle and Dorit finally just bury the text message thing. There's really nothing much to get into. Kyle and Dorit sit down, they finally have a calm face-to-face. Kyle says like, listen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. She kind of lies again. She goes, I swear I didn't know that you and PK were in such a bad place. And then Dorit goes like, listen, is your loyalty to me or is it to PK? Which is exactly what I would be wondering if I was in her position. I think honestly, both women in this moment just realize that they are never gonna agree. They are never gonna be on the same page. And I think both of them are just so done with this. So it seems like they just kind of agree to be done, which is great. I'm happy. And the way it looks so windy and unpleasant at this lunch, it is 62 degrees. They have the weather in the lower third. It is 62 degrees. Erica has a blanket wrapped over her head. She's huddled up like this. I just know that food was ice cold. I just know the women were wishing they were just back in Garcelle's dining room with a microwave heating up that food. I bet it was so disgusting and covered in sand and just freezing. They're playing a party game where they just kind of like ask each other questions, and Erica reveals that she's never been in love, which is interesting because I feel like it's been alleged before that she just married Tom for his money, which like, of course. And I feel like anytime somebody has said that to her before, she has like been really upset and been like, no, I love him. But I feel like probably what she would say is like she loved him, but she wasn't like in love with him.
Erica has never been in love. In love where you feel it in your whole body.
I mean, I feel sex like that, but love? I mean, I gotta have some penetration to get there.
Oh, Jesus.
I feel like as much as Erica annoyed me during the whole Tom scandal when she was just being so like uncompassionate towards the victims, like I haven't forgiven her for that. I'm not gonna say that. But sometimes, I don't know, part of me when I see scenes like this, like the end, I do like feel myself rooting for her. Like, I want her to end up with someone. I think it would be so hot if she ended up with like a much younger guy. Like, she's probably in her late 40s. I think it would be kind of hot if she dated a man who was like in his like mid to late 20s. I can like really see that for her. And then Jennifer Tilly sends us home by saying that she remembers she loves her ex anytime she gets to use valet parking or buy a Gucci outfit. Me too, girl. This was kind of the midpoint for this season of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. They showed the trailer for what the second half of the season is gonna look like, and I'm excited. I think finally the heat is gonna be turned up. We're 9 episodes in, and I feel like so far it's just been a little underwhelming. But I have a feeling starting next week, I think things are really gonna pick up finally. I feel like we need it. Let's touch on the Salt Lake City reunion real quick. We're starting out with John telling Todd, like, watch your tone with how you speak to me and my wife, like, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like Todd was just never taking a tone at all. I feel like he seemed really just, like, level-headed. I think John is a little bit scared of Lisa, and I think he felt like he had to say that, otherwise Lisa would be mad at him, because Todd is speaking, like, very slowly and calmly and respectfully, but whatever. Andy brings up the allegations that Meredith leveraged Brooke's sexuality to take attention away from the false allegations that she allegedly made about Sean being gay. This whole thing honestly kind of confused me. I had to watch it twice. But she denies that she ever made those claims about Sean. And they had never said, during the show, they had never really said like the root of where all of this came from. And it turns out this whole thing started after Sean did an interview with some podcaster, and they play the audio, and it was such a nothing clip.
Meredith said in this, I think, most or second most recent episode, my son is gay, I'm on the board of GLAAD, I would never out someone's sexuality. Like, is that another like roundabout, not good defense? I mean, that's kind of, she's using that as a defense to say, why am I being blamed for this? I would never out someone's sexuality. Not that there is a sexuality to even out.
It's basically just the podcaster trying to insert himself into the drama, which is like so lame and embarrassing. And the podcaster is essentially like, oh, well, Meredith said like this, and this about like, oh, I have a gay son. I would never out somebody else, like this, and this, and this. Don't you think that's a little bit of an excuse? And don't you think that's like a little bit like of a lame excuse? Like blah, blah, blah. It's a very leading question, which is what Andy says. He goes, that was a really leading question. It was the podcaster trying to express his own opinion in the form, like disguising it as a question. But it was the podcaster trying to like insert himself and plant thoughts in Sean's head. Andy asks Sean point blank, do you think that Meredith started the rumor? And Sean said that the way he saw it was that her and Monica had something to do with it. So that when Meredith brought up her son's sexuality, it felt like a backpedal. When really listening to that, I just thought it was like a good defense from Meredith. It's like, my son is gay. Why in the world would I out somebody else? My son is gay. I know how serious that is. I don't think she was trying to use that as a cover-up. I think she was just explaining like, listen, with my background having a gay son, I understand that outing somebody can be dangerous, so why would I ever do that? That's what she was trying to say. What would be a cover-up, like if Meredith was using Brooks' sexuality as a shield, that would be if Meredith did actually out Sean. And she was like, oh no, like I did out Sean, but that's okay, I can do that because I have a gay son. That's what using Brooks as a shield would look like. And then Meredith said that Monica on a couple of occasions last year straight up said like, no, I was the one who spread the rumor. It wasn't Meredith, it was only me. I also cannot tell if it's the lighting that's making everybody look bad or if it's just bad self-tanner, because all of these women, except Meredith actually, look orange. Like they look like Oompa Loompas. Except Meredith, her glam team showed up. I'm not gonna lie, Meredith looks really good and she's sitting all the way on the edge of that couch and she is truly the only one who does not look like she just walked out of a tanning bed where she was for 3 hours. Now we're talking about the circle jerk thing, and Lisa is claiming that that circle jerk thing was just an analogy and she doesn't actually believe that Angie's husband participates in circle jerks. And Angie is like, well, it was reckless reckless of you to do that. And then all of the women are like, Angie, you're bringing up reckless shit all the time. I mean, to be fair though, I will say, like, yes, Angie is messy, but I do think there's a difference between being reckless by saying Britani has high body count hair and like planting the seeds that like somebody's husband is doing circle jerks all the time. Here's the thing, I actually do believe that Lisa was just using it as an analogy. I think it was an oddly specific analogy. I'm like, oh wow, you really like, that was like very specific. You know what I mean? So that's why I understand why like Angie was upset. It was really specific and out of nowhere. But I do believe that Lisa just said that in her anger. Listen, we don't follow these women for like their intelligence. You know what I mean? I don't think that Lisa is like a particularly smart woman to understand that like maybe she shouldn't point fingers at somebody's husband and just randomly say that they do circle jerks. A fan writes in, and I'm so happy this was brought up. A fan writes in and says that listening to Todd talk to Braun at the couple's vacation sounded like a parent scolding a child. Heather said that it reminded her of her ex-husband, which I feel like, coming from Andy, it's kind of like a malicious question, because it's like Heather has talked about how her marriage to her ex-husband was extremely toxic and he was just like mean and just treated her as like lower than him because she was a woman and she was just the wife. So I feel like Andy just out of nowhere being like, oh Heather, does that remind you of your ex-husband? It's sort of implying that like that's what everybody is thinking about Todd, which they also show this really weird deleted scene of Todd talking to Heather, and Bronwyn is there too. They're all at a dinner table. I don't know where they were. And Todd is like being a little overly complimentary towards Heather. I think maybe Heather's talking about like, oh, trying to find someone, like why is she single? And Todd is like, you're exceptionally attractive. You're so smart. You're very funny. And Bronwyn's literally just sitting there like, okay, that's enough. That's enough. Todd like seems like the type. You know what I mean? I mean, he's had emotional affairs before. Bronwyn will be the first to tell you like he's always looking for the next best thing. He can never be satisfied, blah, blah, blah. Todd definitely seems like the type to like push it just a little too far. He's like that older man where you see him at a party or whatever, and maybe he's like touching your shoulder, and maybe he's like commenting on your outfit. Like it's not enough to where you're gonna straight up yell at him and be like, don't talk to me like that. But it's enough to where like you're kind of telling your friends like, oh, that guy's like a little weird. That's like Todd to me. We talk super briefly about Seth calling Whitney biatch, and Andy kind of is like, wasn't that like super aggressive of you to do that? And Seth is claiming that he called Whitney biatch because that's just how he talks. And if he was walking down the street and he saw Sean, Whitney's husband, walking down the street, he'd be like, what's up, biatch? Part of me kind of believes him, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I do believe that biatch is kind of something Seth would say because he's corny like that. But I think in that context, him calling Whitney biatch, I do think that was him just trying to call her a bitch. And then Andy asks Sean, Whitney's husband, like, do you regret not stepping in and standing up for her? Like, why were you just sitting there? And Sean's just kind of like, yeah. Listen, Sean doesn't strike me as a fighter. He doesn't. He strikes me as kind of like a tired man. You know, he got fired from his old job because of this show. So he just said that he promised himself he wouldn't get into any more fights, which is like, I get it. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. You got fired from your old job because of you being on The Real Housewives and having these inappropriate conversations. It makes sense to me, but at the same time, if I was Whitney sitting next to my husband and another man just essentially called me a bitch and my husband didn't step in, I would be upset. Todd did not watch the episode where Bronwyn brought up their emotional affair. He says that anything that Bronwyn would have shared would have been too much. And he reveals, remember when Bronwyn says like, oh, we made up and he made 5 promises to me, and it sounded like really weird. Todd reveals that the 5 promises he made were support, love, fidelity, transparency, and taking care of her. Bronwyn honestly seems to be really downplaying the emotional affair, which is really interesting because on the boat, she was really making it seem like a big deal. And she started this whole fight with Meredith and Lisa because she felt like they didn't take her side and that they were downplaying the affair. So I think it's really interesting that like when Todd is in the room, all of a sudden the affair isn't really a big deal. Like, we're over it. We're so strong. Honestly, Todd seemed like he was really nervous to be there. Jr. And it was kind of sweet. I don't know. It was kind of sweet when they sent the husbands off and Bronwyn and Andy was like, especially like, shout out to Todd. You did really great, Todd. And then Bronwyn is kind of comforting him and Todd just seems like really shy. It was really sweet. I don't know. I feel like he has such like a love-hate relationship with this show. But I feel like in that moment, like seeing Bronwyn comfort him after he was so clearly nervous to be on that stage, it made me kind of root for them. I don't know. We end with talking about RHOBH Jr. It was a really emotional conversation. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. I straight up cried with all of these women watching that conversation. We learned that he was in rehab for a month and he's doing well. And oh my, Andy cries when he brings up RHOBH Jr. calling himself a stain. That's when I cried too. Did you also cry? I was on the couch like sobbing. It was a really beautiful conversation. A lot of the women, I think Heather and Whitney, they both watched it with their kids. They said it opened up conversations. I'm not gonna lie, you might think I'm doing too much, but I really believe it when I say that I think that conversation between Mary and Robert is going to save lives. I really do believe that. It also made me realize the reunion that a lot of these women have family members that have struggled with addiction. Like there's Mary, there's Whitney with her dad, who I totally forgot about. There's Angie with her mom. Like I didn't realize until right now that addiction has touched so many of these women's lives. So like it makes sense that was such an emotional conversation. I'm literally getting emotional like thinking about it right now. It was very, very beautiful. Next week is the third and final part of the reunion. My girl Britani comes in. I cannot wait to see her. I feel like she's really gonna like bring it on home. You know what I mean? I feel like that conversation with Robert, we like left it on a really like heavy, heartfelt note. And I feel like Britani is gonna just bring us right back up and it is gonna be bananas. Keep an eye out. In a couple of days, I'm gonna be posting my recap of Traders US episode 6. And then a couple of days after that, I'll be back to recap The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And Love is Blind is coming. Oh my God, Love is Blind. We haven't even talked about this yet. Love is Blind is starting in a week and a half. I'm so excited. Lots of exciting things coming. So please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.